time it is. Marvin Devine, Huber, Axel, and you know how we do. Yeah, I got the juice. Big game cool, make them look like cool. Always play it cool, that's the biggest rule. Forget what they doing, keep on doing. I've been making loot since like 22. Ask me how I made it right here in the booth. I'm always pursued cause of what I pursue. That's greatness, yeah, I gotta make it, I got things to lose. Boy, wanna get in my crew, but you can't get in my crew. Me, Axel, and Huber, way too fireable. When this joint drop, better call the troops. And when you hear the drop, better raise the roof. Better raise the roof. You already know what happens when we link up. Let's go. Yeah.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. It's your Uncle Jim back with Kidney Stories 2, and tonight we have the great Armand Halter with us. Tonight's guest is my friend Armand Halter. He is both a kidney patient and a kidney advocate. He is the winner of the NKF's 2021 Richard K. Salick Award. Each year, the National Kidney Foundation presents the Richard K. Salick Advocacy Award to an outstanding kidney patient advocate. This prestigious award is given to an individual who embodies the spirit of the NKF's dear friend and former colleague, Richard Salick, a former pro surfer who underwent 3 kidney transplants, that's 3, and faced cancer, but still put the needs of other kidney patients ahead of his own. It is the highest honor the NKF bestows on advocacy volunteers. Armand also has a very fascinating kidney story. It began when he was 5 years old as a pediatric kidney patient, leading some 30 years later to his kidneys failing. After a tumultuous experience with dialysis, he received a kidney transplant. The complications didn't stop there, however. There were multiple surgeries, gout, and a reaction to his immunosuppressant medication. Despite the obstacles Armand had to overcome, he is now a world-class kidney advocate. He is both an NKF Pure mentor, and a Kidney Advocacy Committee member. His particular experience and expertise is with the Living Donor Protection Act, both on a national and state level. Please give a warm welcome to a great kidney advocate, and our friend Armand Halter is here tonight. Armand, how are you, buddy?
I'm good. I'm doing well.
Good, good. I just wanted to get this out of the way up front so people understand. You're an engineer by education and trade. Is that correct?
Yep, that's correct.
So, you know, our friend is kind of precise. So be ready.
Yeah, we have that tendency. We keep spreadsheets, all of that.
All right. Let's talk about your kidney story. When did you first begin to experience problems with your kidneys?
It's I was about 5 years of age, and I had an inflamed right kidney. I'm not sure how that was actually diagnosed at the time. The inflammation was so great that apparently it appeared to the doctors that it could have been a horseshoe kidney, where the two kidneys are actually joined together. So they went, there was an operation scheduled. They went in to deal with a horseshoe kidney. That's not what they found. I had two separate kidneys, but the right one was greatly inflamed. There was backflow on the right side because there was necking in the ureter, two necks actually, between the kidney and the bladder. And they weren't prepared to do anything with that at that point. And so they removed the appendix while they were there. And then you don't need the appendix, apparently. So
I guess not.
Yeah. So subsequently, there were two operations scheduled, one to go in and remove one neck near the kidney, the second one to remove it near the bladder. Between each operation, the ureter was stretched to either the bladder or the kidney as appropriate and allowed to heal, and then they went back in to do it in the other direction. The trouble with that is it gives you a straight pipe from the kidney to the bladder. And so over time, the backflow continued. Looking back on things, every time I had a urine test, there'd be a few percent albumin in the urine, which they didn't really think was significant, but that was probably debris from the kidney.
I read, in addition to the kidney-related surgeries, that you also had a hernia operation as well. Is that correct?
Well, I was 5 years old. They didn't have little kids' beds. They had regular adult beds, you know, with railings on the side, and you had to climb in and out. And that's how I got the hernia. So I had to stay in for a third operation, which was to deal with the hernia.
Okay. And I understand that the next time that you became aware of issues with your kidney, 30 years had passed, an infection of your right kidney. Is that correct?
Yeah, I really didn't think about it after that. I was in the habit of giving blood at the large employer in southeastern Connecticut, Electric Boat, and I was doing that on a quarterly basis. And as part of that, they check your blood, and they determined that I had kidney failure. And it was an abrupt, short phone call to my wife. No cell phones at the time, and they just told her that I had to see an internist, because I really don't even think there was much in the way of nephrologists around either. So to deal with it, and of course she freaks out because we had two boys, ages 8 and 11 at the time, and she's worried about me passing and then raising two young boys as a single mom, and you know, on a speech pathologist salary. in the school system. So it was quite a shock, and I didn't learn about it till I got home.
Okay. Wow.
No cell phones.
As I understand it, the backflow was going to the left kidney, and eventually it also infected the right kidney as well. So
It was
both of
going,
your kidneys were affected
as
by the
far as
backflow.
we know, there was only backflow to the right kidney, and that continued the deterioration of the right kidney. How that impacted the kidney on the left side, I'm not really certain, but I think basically if you have an infection, it can spread. I don't know the mechanism that it can spread, but it did. And because when I went to the doctor, I mean, I had approximately 10% kidney function at the time.
Okay. After you saw the doctor, he told you you had the 10% function. What did you try to do to control the issue?
Well, I was recommended to the pair of local nephrologists. There were two, they were in practice together. And we talked about, having to ultimately go on peritoneal dialysis. Actually, I think in between that, we were talking to a nephrologist in New Jersey that my mother-in-law worked for. And he was the one that actually installed the Tinkoff catheter after I was trying to control the kidney function for about 6 months. And it just wasn't getting, I was gonzo. So I had the Tinkoff catheter installed in New Jersey at St. Barnabas. And then I came back up here to start dialysis. And that's pretty much the
okay. Why did you choose peritoneal dialysis? Why not in-center hemo?
The only in-center hemodialysis available to me was in Warwick, Rhode Island, and that's 45 minutes away from my house without any traffic. That would be 3 days a week. You're there for 4 hours a day, plus the hour and a half. The hour and a half in transit. You pretty much have blown the workday. So that it's kind of tough to talk your employer into allowing you to work 2 days a week as opposed to 5. And I needed the income.
Sure. You had 2 young children at home. What kind of work were you doing at that time, Armand?
At that time, I was at a company called Tracor locally, and I was working on sonar installations, that sort of thing. And when I started the dialysis, I was in the process of switching jobs to a small company in Old Saybrook that did environmental acoustics for the Office of Naval Research. And so that didn't involve any travel. So it was a lot easier for me because, now I had a stay at home job, so to speak. And the only travel were day trips up to Newport, Rhode Island, and that sort of thing.
Okay. Did your dialysis nephrologist discuss the possibility of having a kidney transplant with you, or did you get that information from another source?
That's a touchy subject for me personally every time it comes up, because absolutely not. The nephrologist did not. I have no idea why at all, except that they were caring for a patient who was on peritoneal dialysis. That's what they did. And they didn't recommend me seeking treatment elsewhere for anything else. So it was the peritoneal dialysis nurses that I saw monthly in Bacchus Hospital in Norwich that whispered it to me. You should consider getting a transplant. And they said there were transplant centers at Yale New Haven Hospital and Hartford Hospital. And they said the doctors won't recommend it to you.
Okay. Wow.
So, yeah, that I really don't understand why, um, but it's that was, I guess, beginning of my education that everything is not the same all over the place. Dialysis centers are different, transplant centers are different, doctors are different, and it's it's just amazing to me looking back on it.
Right. Right. Where did you first go for your interview? What transplant center was that?
That was the one down in Yale. Um, Frankly, I think within the state of Connecticut, Yale is got got the big name, so to speak, is the most well-known entity, and so, and I had a choice of two, so 50-50, right? So
Right.
I was more comfortable driving down to New Haven, and I just did not have a good feeling dealing with the doctor down there at all. Um, the protocol he was talking about at the time is an old protocol, but it didn't make sense to me at all, which was they wanted to remove the native kidneys first before I went on transplant. And I couldn't understand why I would have to do that because at that point, my kidneys had become raisins and were just not in the picture literally at all. If you could find them, they just weren't going to be. You couldn't see them or whatever. They were dead. They weren't making urine of any kind, and so with that, I became very discouraged. And I'm not exactly how long I pouted, if you will, with that news because you figure all transplant centers are the same. I'm going to get the same answer at the other one because it's all one big scientific family. But I think it was after 6 months or a year. Uh, dialysis is great. It allows you to do a lot of things, but it's not as good as having a kidney. So I called the Hartford Hospital and I went up there to talk to them, and they said, "No, we don't feel that you have to remove the native kidneys." I said, "Oh, well, that's great. There we go. One operation doesn't have to happen. At least one, if not two." And so let's go for it. And you go through various tests, chest X-rays, all of that, where they found the spot, and that had to be biopsied. The doctor in Norwich said, "Well, our protocol is to just watch it, see what happens to it, and measure it." And they said, "No, you're going to biopsy it and determine if it's benign or not." So I don't know if you've ever gone through a needle biopsy of your lung, but that's not exactly the most pleasant experience. And but you go through it, you do it, and it was benign, and voila, I'm on the list.
Right. Now, when we talk about the biopsy, what's the deal with the biopsy and your liver? Can you talk about that story a little bit?
That was the other two nephrologists. That was when I was originally found with close to 10% function. They wanted to do a biopsy on my kidneys. Although at that point I was wondering what could they possibly give for a treatment that would fix that situation. I was not at 60%, 50%, 30%. I was pretty much gone at that point. So I went in for the biopsy. I get out of that operation. I get upstairs to my room. I'm recovered, and they come in and they say, "Well, we didn't get your kidney. We got your liver. We need you to go back down."
Oh
yeah,
my.
Naturally, I'm trying to keep a good attitude about it because my wife's sitting there freaking out. So
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
By the way, what's the wife's name?
Kathy.
She's pretty. She makes a very good She takes good pictures with you. Keep her around,
I
Armand.
always take pictures of her. She's obviously a big part of my life. We've been together as of this summer, it'd be 47 years. So,
Oh,
it's a left leg, right leg type of deal at this point. But yeah, I had a friend from high school. We happened to be on a similar trip in South Africa, and we were at the falls in Lake Victoria in Tanzania. He had gone by a different route or whatever, and he saw my wife. Now, he recognized her because of all the postings I do on Facebook with my wife and I, especially when we travel. So he said, I knew you had to be here. So, and that was funny, running into somebody who from high school in.
how much time passed between the time that you were put on a list and you're still doing peritoneal dialysis and the time you actually got the call for a transplant?
I think it may have only been about a year and a half. I didn't write down the dates. You're just trying to keep, doing your job and doing your dialysis treatments. But it was something like a year and a half. Overall, I was probably on peritoneal dialysis about 3 3/4 years when I got the call in January of 1996. And that call was at 3 a.m. in the morning. And I woke up out of a deep sleep and wasn't quite aware of my surroundings or who the heck is calling me at 3 a.m. And it was Dr. Bardis from Hartford. And he said, well, I have a kidney for you. And I don't think I said a thing. And he said, do you want a kidney? And I said, yes, I do. But, it's something you wait for such a long time. It comes as a shock when they actually give you the call. And he said, we'll be up here by 6 o'clock in the morning. So we packed our bags and we went and made some arrangements for somebody to get the kids off to school, that sort of thing. And there I was up there. I mean, the operation was about 10 hours long at that time. It's not like it is today. Today, it's like, a 5-hour operation. So this was a long operation.
Okay. Approximately what date, what year are we talking about, Armand, at this point?
That was January 22nd, 1996.
Okay, so transplanted in 96. Now, the transplant was not your usual garden variety transplant. Can you tell us a little bit about what happened?
My donor was a pediatric donor, 3 years of age, and that was pretty new at the time. They just started doing it, I guess, and I got both kidneys from the child because of their original small size, but they functioned perfectly from the get-go, and over time they grew to adult size because of the increased load. Must have been quite a shock for them.
Yeah. And just so we're clear, this was a cadaver, not a live transplant. Is that right?
Yep. Unfortunately, the child had passed. Dr. Schweitzer was in the other OR harvesting the kidneys, and they just brought it into my OR and put them in there, and all was good.
Okay, and that's about 28 years ago now, right? Is my math right?
25, actually.
25.
I hit 25 years back in January.
Don't take any math advice from your Uncle Jim. Okay.
I'll take legal advice.
Okay, that we can do. Were there problems or complications after the transplant that you could talk to us about?
Yeah, that was another thrill. I mean, the transplant doctor had told me how well the kidneys had worked because when he hooked it up to my body right away, they turned pink and they were making urine right away. And then he went and completed the operation. Now that I'm making urine, the time comes to pee. And lo and behold, while I've been on dialysis, my prostate had enlarged and I couldn't pee. And I got the news from a surgical resident who was originally from Switzerland. And but unlike the Swiss, he wasn't all that diplomatic. He basically said, "There's nothing more we can do for you," meaning from a transplant perspective. And then he was, Dr. Bartis took him out in the hallway for a consult. And he came back and he said, "We're, a urologist will deal with this. Your operation has to heal first." And so the next step was to see a urologist up there. And the decision was that, yep, in about 6 months' time or 4 months' time, something like that, they'll go ahead and do the TURP procedure, which is not a pleasant experience in its own right, but it gets the job done. And in the meantime, during that wait, I had to self-catheterize, which is not fun. And anybody who's had a Foley can figure out what you have to do. And but still, even with that, other than the you gotta go in the bathroom by yourself, this kind of thing, and do it and have the catheter with you. And unlike those ads, there's not a perfect catheter out there for you like that, where you can fly a plane across the country using your catheter while you're flying. Not at that time anyway. And you have to keep it clean and all of that during the day, because it's the only one you have with you. And so, but you deal with it.
7 months of this, right?
I think, if I recall right, I think we did the TURP procedure in May, so it would have been about 4 months.
4 months, okay. Now, were there complications or problems from the TURP procedure?
Sure. I mean, the procedure was fine, but I was in the recovery room. And if you've ever been in a recovery room, certain operations are done early in the morning, like mine was. You go to the recovery room, and then like the tide, people go out together, and then the next set of people are coming in from the next set of operations that the surgeons have done, etc. Well, I watched the tide go out twice, and I wasn't leaving. And the reason was because the two residents that worked for this urologist could not stop the bleeding. And there's a lot of bleeding when they do the rotor-rooter job on your prostate, not to be coarse about it. And the person who checked on me was my transplant surgeon, Dr. Bartis. Anytime I went in for any procedure, they always checked on me, because they have an investment in you, and you basically made a promise to them to take care of them, to take care of the kidneys, and they basically have a contract with you to take care of you. And he checked on me. He saw I wasn't coming out. The urologist didn't check. Anyway, so he calls the head of the group, because the first urologist, he already left Dodge, and I don't know where he was, probably on the golf course, as the story goes. But he called the head of the group in and said, "You've got to deal with this patient. Your residents aren't able to stop the bleeding." So I had never met him before. He didn't know my name, didn't know my wife's name, and all this kind of stuff. And he stopped the bleeding.
Good. Wow. There's no shortcuts in your kidney story, Armand. Absolutely none.
No, it's on. Procedures are a lot better today. Transplant procedures, donation procedures are much different today than they were, back then. And, back then is not a long time, but I mean, even, dialysis treatments haven't been around a long time, since the early 70s. And it's hard to believe sometimes when you think back and you look at it. But anyway, I never had a problem with the transplant itself. No rejection episodes whatsoever. So it's just these other things that everybody faces in their life. As we age, there's other things going to come along.
Okay.
But I always remember what the nephrologist in St. Barnabas, what he said to me, and it really picked me up at that time. He said, "This won't kill you. Okay, you can be on dialysis, and you can get a transplant. This won't kill you." And those are powerful words when you're facing end stage renal disease. That end.
Let's talk a little bit about some of the problems that you had post-transplant. Tell us a little bit about the issues you had with gout.
Well, I had learned that I had gout while I was in college. I've been on allopurinol since my early 20s, and it was controlled. When I went on peritoneal dialysis, there was no need for the allopurinol. The very good thing about peritoneal dialysis is that it sucks out the uric acid like crazy, not just from your bloodstreams, but eventually cleans out all of your tissues. And so I didn't need allopurinol. I didn't have a gout attack for 5 years following my transplant. And but that's when it came roaring back, and I had an attack, a severe attack in my wrist. And previously, it always been in my toe. As everybody says they always get a gout attack in their foot and whatever. Well, it can hit any joint, and it hit the joint in my wrist, my right wrist, and it was excruciating. You could see the swelling in the wrist. I thought I had maybe I had twisted it or injured it somehow, although I couldn't identify any event that did that. And the local doctors I went to kept looking at it as a sports injury. Hey, I'm somebody who is not even 50 yet, and I have this inflamed wrist. And finally, I gave up on the local docs. I'd seen, I think, 2. And I wasn't getting anywhere. So in desperation on the weekend and in extreme pain, I called the transplant center, and the doctor on call at that time was Dr. Hull, and he called me back from a cocktail party that he was at. This was Saturday, something like that. And in like 10 seconds, he said, "You're suffering a gout attack. I want you up in the hospital. I'll meet you there with their rheumatologist." And he did. So.
What did they do for you, Armand?
Gave me large doses of prednisone for the inflammation, and as much painkiller as I wanted. And although that might sound like a good thing to some people, I can tell you that when you're seeing the graffiti appearing on the walls or the decorations along the ceiling moving, I did not like that effect.
Yeah,
But that's how bad the pain was. And but the inflammation came down, and after it did, then I was prescribed allopurinol again, and I haven't had a gout attack since.
Okay. The other issue that I know that you had post-transplant had to do with the reaction to the immunosuppressant medication. Can you tell us a little bit about that and what they did for you?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that they encourage you to do is, get a GP if you don't have one, to do your annual checkups and like that, and get a dermatologist. because there's certain forms of skin cancer that are really impacted by the immunosuppressants, particularly mycophenolate. And but I don't know what my dosages were at that time, but I had a wart. I'll call it infestation, okay, for want of a better word. I don't know how much people know about warts, but in the center of a wart is going to be like a little black dot, which is like the root of the wart. And from that, it can spread and so on. Well, it was all over my right hand. And no, I didn't take any pictures because it was so ugly. And besides, we didn't have cell phones at the time to make it. And it was down the fingers on my right hand, down to the thumb, and across the back of the hand. And, the treatment for warts is that, they burn them off. But this was so extensive, and it just blossomed in a very short time. So the dermatologist recommended me to a dermatologist down at Yale, who was doing experimental treatments involving the injection of steroids directly into the wart. And since it was all over my hand, that's what he was doing. It was, we would spend like 20 minutes for him poking a needle and injecting it down my fingers, across the back of my hand, etc. And it would kill the wart, and gradually the tissues would, that would fall off. And then we'd have another appointment. I forget how frequently they were, if it was on a monthly basis or bi-weekly basis. And he'd go through the procedure again, and more of the wart would die.
Okay. Eventually, they took care of it.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Right. Let's talk a little bit about your kidney advocacy. What brought about your decision to advocate for other kidney patients with the National Kidney Foundation? How did that happen?
Well, in 2018, I had basically stopped full-time working around December 2015. And about 2018, I felt like giving back. I mean, going through the process between being diagnosed to dialysis to transplantation is a very emotional and trying time for a kidney patient. And I wanted to sign up to be a peer mentor. And unfortunately, when I contacted NKF in the fall of 2018, they'd already gone through the training for that year. And they said, would you want to be an advocate? I don't know. Okay, sure. I'll be an advocate, but I still wanted to be a peer mentor. But anyway, so off I go to the next Kidney Summit, which was March of 2019. And, then as now, we had a Living Donor Protection Act as one of the main things that we were asking about. But after talking to the other advocates, I think it might have been you or Kent at the time.
Or both.
It had been years that we've been advocating for a Living Donor Protection Act at the national level. And it wasn't getting anywhere. It wasn't really gaining any traction. And even though it's a no cost item, and it's, but at the same time, at the summit, I learned that other states had passed their own. So I think at the time there were 12 states that had a Living Donor Protection Act. One of them was New York. And I said, should be able to do that in Connecticut. So I reached out to the local organization. In Connecticut, we have one person. We share our executive director with New York, but and it was Marcia Hilditch, and she had contacts within the state. I contacted Andrew Fullerton, who gave me a list of, from National, who gave me a list of other advocates within the state. So I had that. And he also recommended another person within the state, Matt Halter, who was a lobbyist. And he had worked with NKF to get a week in September designated as Kidney Week, a proclamation from the governor. I think it had started off as a proclamation for PKD because his father had PKD, and they expanded it to include all kidney disease. And if I remember correctly, it was the September of 2019 that they got that proclamation in. But and then I found out that the two of the advocates, the other advocates, Robin Gilmartin and Diane Mack, well, they had already come to the same conclusion that our state needed a Living Donor Protection Act, and they had reached out to their representative, actually their state senator first, who he directed them to their state representative because she was interested in starting a Living Donor Protection Act. And it's so we're working towards the same cause right from the get-go. And then the fall of 2019, we were putting together a bill, and in the let's see, the fall of 2019, it would have been for the 2020 session. We had approval from the insurance committee. We had a joint favorable report. But if you remember last year, we also had this thing coming around COVID, which just stopped the session cold. And later on in the year, you know, they brought they had special sessions to do a couple of major acts, but that was it. And so, and it comes to the end of 2020, and we resubmit the bill. We got a joint favorable report from the committee. We got endorsements from ACLI, IAC, the insurance groups. There was, I think it was one word or phrase within the bill that they had a problem with. That wasn't defined enough, so that was the words were adjusted, and we have bipartisan, bicameral support. We just picked up another co-sponsor today, a Republican. So now we have 6 Democrats and two Republicans, one of whom is my rep. And on the Senate side, you know, my state senator has been very supportive. Our president pro tem of the Senate, he's a kidney recipient, transplant recipient from a living donor. One of the big sponsors of the bill this year is Representative Curry, who he's received a living kidney donation this past winter. And so he's very supportive.
Great. When we're talking about the Living Donor Protection Act, Armand, explain to our audience, what is that all about?
It protects people who are considering to become living donors. It protects the living donor from insurance discrimination when they seek life insurance, disability insurance, and long-term care insurance. And the transplant centers, you know, when you evaluate somebody to become a living donor, you check them out, you know, that psychologically they're ready to do this, that they're okay with it. And but one of the things they warn you about is that you can have these impacts related to your job, related to your insurance. And the words are frank and straightforward and scary. And it becomes a barrier to somebody actually going through. And some people that want to be an altruistic donor, they back away. Not everybody has a brother or a sister. I didn't. I was an only child. My parents were deceased, so they couldn't donate to me.
Two young children.
Yeah, and at the time, living donation was not laparoscopic surgery. It was, they opened you up. So it was, and a lot of the operations on living donors were much more, they had a tougher time recovering than the transplant recipient. That's, put it bluntly. So I didn't even bother to check with my sons. And although I'm O and a universal donor, I need an O to donate to me. And my wife is not an O. She's, I don't know, I think an A or a, I forget, but she couldn't donate to me. She wasn't an O.
Okay. All right. So
It's important.
Living Donor Protection Act protects against discrimination by insurance companies by canceling you or altering your insurance, raising rates.
Yeah, I mean, there's horror stories out there for how much they have raised some insurance people. Some people have been outright refused when they find out that they've been through a nephrectomy, which is the technical term for removing a kidney. Because when you say nephrectomy, it sounds like it was removed for cause, and not a good one. And, well, it's just one of those words. I donated a kidney. That sounds great. I had a nephrectomy. Okay, what was wrong with it? Type of thing. But hopefully it will increase the supply. I mean, each year in Connecticut, we have 1,000 people, 1,200 people waiting on the waiting list. Only about 25% of them will get a transplant this year. And the rest of the people are waiting. And, I waited around a fair amount of time, but the average dialysis patient, well, truth is, they only are on dialysis 5 years or so, and then it turns bad. And so, although it extends life and it's a wonderful gift, it's not probably is not forever. Yes, there are stories out there of people being 20 years on peritoneal dialysis and 13 years and that sort of thing. But, it's not the rule. I mean, but, you can't live by the data. If I lived by the data, I would have lost the 2 kidneys that I was given by that child a long time ago. I think a cadaveric transplant is supposed to, on average, last 14 years, and a living donor transplant lasts 2 more years. But those are numbers. Each individual is their own story. In my case, I think a big part of my story was I had a 3-year-old donor. Those are young kidneys. I had heck, look at all the abuse I can offer those kidneys to that child. But I think about that family and what they went through every year. So that's a tough thing for parents to go through.
Explain to our audience why it has been necessary to introduce the Living Donor Protection Act, protecting against discrimination against your insurance company and your employers. Why not just follow through on the federal level? Why are we introducing Living Donor Protection Acts in various states as well? Explain why that has happened.
Well, at the time, I was seeing a lot of things being dismantled by the change in administrations. Personally, I was upset by a lot of things being dismantled within the EPA, but it really doesn't make the specifics don't make a difference. It's the fact that you have a new administration and philosophically they want to do things differently, and things start changing. It's like double protection. If they don't do it on the national level, then we have it on the state level. If you have enough states doing it, then the federal level gets embarrassed that they haven't done something, and then it makes it easier to get it on the federal level. So I mean, this is a wonderful, diverse country, very conservative, very liberal, all of that, all the good and bad that goes with both of those. And so, you know, it's tough to bring everybody together for national legislation a lot of times, unless it's a clear-cut winner that saves money or what have you. But this doesn't cost money, but that's not as good as saving money. And but I think it's necessary. I think this year we can well see the number of states with living donor protection acts increase from 12 to, it's already at 14. I think Connecticut will pass. I think Washington, Kentucky just passed. So what's that? That we could easily be 18 or 19 states by the next summit. That's huge. That's almost 50%. And the insurance companies are not stupid. They're not going to follow a dying road. They've come to accommodations with it, and they're not rejecting it out of hand. So what is the objection at the national level? And the story gets stronger with how many states are already doing it. And it also protects that benefit will stay there. If enough states are doing it, then the insurance companies don't do it anywhere because it's not good business.
Okay. You wrote to me and told me that part of the reason that it hasn't passed on the federal level is that there's a philosophical difference about whether or not insurance matters can be regulated at the federal level. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, that is. It's certain senators have that view. And if they're on the committee, it only takes one to really keep it from actually getting out on the floor and getting out of the committee. And congressmen and senators are, the ideal case is that nobody says anything bad about it. Everybody wants it, as is the case that we have in Connecticut, but that hasn't been the case at the federal level. So we do what we can, where we can. If you can't get it up here in the sky, you get it down here at the next level.
Right. I noticed recently that you had published a couple of newspaper articles on the subject. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Oh, the letters to the editor? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. I wrote them last year. I wrote them again this year. So far, I wrote the two big papers in our state, Hartford Current and the New Haven Register. It's the letter to the editor was printed in the New Haven Register. The Current, hasn't. It can take a while, but that's not so bad. When I put the letters in, they were, if they come out in a month from now, then it has impact because that's probably be the time when it's going through the voting process within the House or the Senate. So it got printed the other night or the other day at the New London Day, but it's a local paper. But the representative that endorsed the bill, I think she read it. She's local. She's over in East Lyme, 12 miles away. And I think she read it. I think she read I don't want to pat myself on the back, but I don't know her from Adam or Eve, as the case may be. I've never spoken to her, never written to her, because she's completely in another town. And I was surprised. I wrote her a thank you letter today and also through her website. So I'm very appreciative of the support that we get across the board.
Okay. Standard question that I've been asking everybody on the show. Tell us about the steps that you and your family have been taking to protect yourself from COVID-19.
Well, we, first of all, we wear a mask when we go outside in a public place. Second of all, probably the most dangerous place that, in our opinion, that we could go is, a place like a grocery store where there's a fair number of people. You can pick your time, but it's never going to be entirely empty. And I don't go. My wife will go in. She'll go and do the shopping for that. If I go in, I'm going for 1-2 items, and it's bang, bang, boom, out. And we've eaten outdoors at restaurants. We haven't eaten indoors. We've done the takeout thing. But fortunately for us, we live in a more rural area. So, going out and hiking, no matter what the weather is, unless it's actually inclement, it's fine. You can always wear a bigger coat. But we've done hikes through the winter and like that. So we've gotten some exercise in, and we've done, heck, my wife's got me doing some yoga poses downstairs, for crying out loud.
All right. Is there anything tonight that you would like to add to our discussion? Is there anything that I failed to ask you about that you want to talk about?
Jim, you're thorough like a good lawyer would be in this deposition. The only thing I can say to the kidney patients who may be listening to this broadcast, this streaming, is that when you get your transplant, there's still going to be other things you're going to have to face, and just like you did with dialysis, if you had to face that, or the transplant surgery, you deal with everything one step at a time, and you just keep moving forward, and you do the best you can as long as you can, and then you keep doing it. Advocate for yourself.
Your own best advocate.
Oh yeah. Don't be afraid. Speak up for yourself. If you're listening to a doctor explain something, ask him until you understand. And if he seems annoyed by having to explain it to you, you need to either bring somebody else with you, or you need a different doctor. That's the bottom line, because this is a two-way street. That no longer is the doctor up on a pedestal dictating to you. You've got to understand, and you got to take care of yourself. You have a responsibility to do that, and the only way you can do that is if he explains it to you, or she explains it to you, and you are able to listen and understand. And if they don't want to explain it to you so you can understand, then they don't know the subject matter correctly. I have to say, I'll plug engineers again. Doctors do respect us because we come in with the spreadsheets. I have a spreadsheet for all of my meds, and I would show it to the doctor. These are the meds that I'm taking. I'm not going to go through and 1 potato, 2 potato. This is what I take. Here it is. It's a list and like that. And I've had the nephrologist in the transplant say, I didn't know the drugs cost this much. They just prescribe them.
Welcome to the National Football League, Doc.
Well, we got the immunobill passed this year. But when I had my transplant, and a lot of other people, but that goes into effect, in another January 22. Right. So it deals with the problem in Medicare that, your Medicare, when you're on dialysis, Medicare will become primary after you're on dialysis for 18 months, assuming you've elected to pay for Medicare and so forth. And if any patients are out there wondering whether they should do it, just going to tell you, do it, because you're not going to get a straight answer out of Medicare or Social Security. So do it. They pay for the transplant basically, and then they cover your immunosuppressants for 3 years thereafter. And then after that, it's just whatever insurance you have. Well, some people don't even go and get the transplant because they only have Medicare as insurance. Okay. And they're not sick, they're not age qualified. So by getting rid of that arbitrary 3 years, people are going to take better care of their kidneys. They're going to take their meds. They're not going to hesitate to get a transplant. Hopefully they get the transplant because their meds are going to be covered. In my day, I was worried about hitting the lifetime caps of my insurance when I was on dialysis. I think at the time, the insurance that covered me had a cap of $700K for your lifetime. That's not a big number when dialysis at the time, I think, was costing $60K. Now it's like $90K. In either case, it's reachable.
Right.
So it's another important piece of legislation that we were able to get through.
Okay. Armand, we're going to have to quit here. We're running into a little bit of overtime, but thank you for talking to us tonight. I learned a lot. I hope our audience learned a lot. Folks, just so you know what's coming up, next Friday, Jen Resilient is with us, Jennifer Jones. We're going to talk to her. The great Valen Kiefer is going to be with us April 30th. I have to talk to my producer, Steve, but I would like to get Mel Tuff back on with us April 13th. That would be a Tuesday special show to talk about Medigap coverage and the Jack Reynolds Memorial Medigap expansion law. So a lot of interesting things coming up on Kidney Stories too. You don't want to miss out on. At any rate, thank you again, Armand, and good night, everybody. We'll talk to you soon.